Now we are going to listen to John and Rosanna, who are two of the members from the container platform team at one of the Swedish banks, Swedbank. How do banking and open source go together? This is what we will find out. So go ahead, John and Rosanna.
My name is John Corbishley and I'm the Agile Product Owner and also the Team Manager for the Container Platform team at Swedbank.
My name is Rosanna Milovanchev and I'm the Container Engineer in John's team joining you here today.
We would like to share with you the Swedbank's adoption of the Container Platform and how OpenShift is supporting our application development platforms. And we hope within this presentation you can see the insights, but also inspiration for your journey onto Red Hat's OpenShift platform. For those who are not familiar with Swedbank, it is a Swedish Baltic banking group. It has 7 million retail customers and over 500,000 corporate customers, mainly across Sweden, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. It's a pleasure to present to you today, but also quite timely, as Swedbank is actually celebrating 200 years of business since humble beginnings in 1820 down in Gothenburg, where we started the first Swedish savings bank. Our passion for OpenShift started in 2018, where we decided we would need to have an enterprise container platform. We already were running a Rancher platform and Docker containers on a Linux platform. But we decided that we needed to build a platform from the ground up. Using the experience and the knowledge gained from these existing platforms, we assessed the many Kubernetes-based platforms available and decided that OpenShift was the preferred choice. So in 2019, we built an OKD 3.11 platform, and we needed to understand the design we would need to master, as well as gain more requirements from the developer and the compliance we have. The main requirements we understood were we would need a cloud-native platform. We are moving towards the cloud and we need to understand that process. We also want containers as a service. So we want to support the development as well as the application development platforms. The most important thing we put on our list was automation and scheduling of maintenance. We really struggled with that with OpenShift 3, and the promise with OpenShift 4 to make that easier actually was one of the requirements for OpenShift 4. And I have to say, from version 4.1, it showed very promising signs, although a little bit challenging. But now we're running 4.5, it is an effortless weekly process. The final challenge we put to us was we needed to be on-premise. So we needed tight integration with our vSphere platform. And again, with OpenShift 4, when it was released with 4.1, it came with support for vSphere. Obviously, it is more than a platform when we make such a fundamental change with a platform of this type. It may sound obvious, but within a bank, some of these changes are quite challenging. And one pure example of that is where we empower the developers to build and run, but also operate and own the service that they're deploying to production. Most of you are already nodding, I'm sure, but we continue to drive that change in Swedbank. The close integration and dependency on existing systems within the bank was important. So other changes that we've seen are really tight integration with those existing services to enable automation. We've introduced the API communication to our platform. We can see that being adopted across the bank, and of course is an enabler for automation. And then role-based access control. We want to be sure that we know who is doing what and has the right to do so, and is also protected from the wrong. Other initiatives in the bank around application development platforms are ongoing, And OpenShift provides the compute and the storage for these. Obviously, we need to bring in pipelines, quality assurance, testing, and most importantly, controls around authentication. And all of these come together to empower our developer community. And one important step is, as we move towards cloud, we need to have this cloud maturity, which is a journey upon itself. Security needs to be built in, compliance needs to be built in, but understanding the management of the consumption of the services being deployed. So things introduced with OpenShift, you've got quotas, you've got requests, and you've got limits that all need to be managed properly, as well as the introduction to resilience of the services, where we are bringing in zones and regions, mirroring what the developer community will experience in the cloud. And an example of that is our data centers are now set up as zones. And because of this prerequisite from the cloud, we're not running any stretched clusters in this platform. The next one is an important one. We realized very early on that we needed help. So we needed help to understand avoidance of the mistakes made when introducing this platform. We needed help around the architecture, the security, the compliance, building the platform, as well as day two operations of the platform. And here we built a partnership with both Red Hat and Sogeti to make sure that we gained value from all the experience of these companies. It worked fantastically from day one and is still operating very well today. An update of where we've got today. So today we are running 4.5.9. Probably by the time this video is out, we will be running a later patch version. We patch the system from end to end, including production systems, every week during business hours. This is a goal that we set ourselves. It is also now expected of us from the developer community. And in fact, they don't want to be notified about it. They saw the notification more disturbing than the patching. As the platform grows, the goal in order to reduce the number of managers taking care of it is automation. So not only are we engineering the platform, we're also engineering all the automation of the ecosystem around it. You can see that we have 5 engineers running 6 different clusters, supporting more than 100 different development teams. This is only possible with automation and with the automation that OpenShift brings. We're evaluating all of the new features and capabilities that are coming through the releases of OpenShift. We're currently moving from UPI to IPI in our vSphere. We're rolling out the vSphere CSI to gain better functionality in the storage. We're also taking a look at the new Tecton pipelines that Red Hat have introduced. A lot of the developers are building their own pipelines, very cumbersome, complicated solutions. These Tecton pipelines are native with containers. And one of the big ones we're looking at is the service mesh. We need to bring in visibility and we need to bring in security, and that certainly looks like a way of achieving those two. So looking back, reflections of the journey so far, sharing our thoughts with you. Areas that we really focused on that spent a lot of time and effort was actually learning OpenShift, the version 4 product. It's subtly different from version 3 and introduces the concept of operators. This has forced us to think about our communication channels. So now we're using Microsoft Teams for collaboration and forums. We are running regular demos of both the new features, but also demos of our hosted services from our developer community. And most importantly, we're getting trainings through the Red Hat services. The next one we found was a trouble was understanding the Kubernetes. So the things like the portability, the natural moving of pods around the platform, to such an extent that we've introduced an architectural design and a requirement on the developers there. A good example to take away is we enforce that the production service is running in 2 pods, so that during the natural patching cycle, the moving of workloads, their services continue to run. We also bring in this concept of managing the quotas, the resources, the requests and the limits. Without those, the capacity management is impossible, and of course, cost then escalates out of control. The biggest one on my list is storage. This really was a challenge, and it has really defined how we've set up our clusters. We spent a lot of time evaluating the technology in this area. So we looked at OpenShift container storage. We assessed the Hitachi CSI direct to our bare metal, but ultimately the vSphere CSI addressed all of our use cases, and that's the one we're implementing as we speak. And then really the last one is the banking processes. As you can imagine, in the banking industry, our mission has been to satisfy all of the banking requirements, especially those that are specific to Swedbank in Sweden. And we've implemented a modern framework that really enables a high speed of change. And it defines a closer collaboration with all of the teams in and around the platform, from compliance and security to developers and operations, to risk management, to change management. They're all involved. I'd now like to hand over to my colleague, who will share a little more about our journey around networking.
The 3 points that you can see in the slide are true for anything that we do and develop, but today we're going to take you through a bit of a networking journey. The reason why we chose networking is because it's very difficult to just choose a little bit out of every topic, and so we wanted to focus on one and give you a better picture of that and show you the complexities that comes with working in the banking industry. The reason we've chosen this particular area as well is because it's been a big topic of conversation for us, and it took quite some time to solution as well. We've had to consider various aspects of restrictions. For example, telemetry is not possible to send out of outside of the organization. We're not allowed to do that. So even in sending information to Red Hat, we've had to disable the functionality of telemetry. We've also had other concerns to satisfy requirements of the bank, and some of those have been, for example, decisions on architectural designs, as well as security reasons, considerations in relation to the zoning model, firewall rules, project isolation, but also internet communication. We've had tremendous help and collaboration, both from within the organization, but from Red Hat as well, supporting us in our designs and decisions if we've needed the help. Swedbank quickly realized that OpenShift did not fit into the current and existing zoning model. So they were very quick on helping us with that and changing that to a more fitting zoning model that was designed and implemented for us. Once that had been defined, we also had help from Red Hat architects to design a solution that would come to help us with project isolation. We then had a possibility to define each of the projects in their own little microzone using namespace boundaries as or separated with network policies. When a project communicated outside of OpenShift, we faced yet another issue in integrating with existing firewalls and the network solution. We evaluated different networking solutions, and because we had seen that the egress IP feature had vastly improved between OpenShift 3 and OpenShift 4 versions, we decided to choose that as our solution. This solution is where an egress IP is allocated, one per project, that allows you to communicate outside of the cluster. In OpenShift 3, you had static assignment of egress IPs on nodes, whereas OpenShift 4 allows you to use dynamic assignment of egress IPs on nodes. By use of egress IPs, we were also able to separate the workload from one another while following the security protocols. We also had the possibility of hosting sensitive workloads without being tied down to specific nodes. This design allows us to only consider egress IP assignment during the onboarding phase, while the networking part of that area lives its own life, and the consumers of the platform, the projects, are then free to make their own firewall openings towards other legacy systems, and other network connections. The next thing we had to consider was ingress traffic. You're probably familiar with the OpenShift HA proxy. It is the OpenShift internal load balancer that is responsible for ingress traffic. We found that the functionalities offered by the HA proxy satisfied our needs. And so because it's a Red Hat supported internal product, we could use it as is with support, and we saw no reason to replace it. But to fulfill the OpenShift install requirements, we had to integrate it or configure an F5 load balancer in front of the HA proxy to forward the requests to the platform. As the platform has matured, we've started to investigate our own ingress handling, as we've encountered new requirements, both from the network team, other parts of the organization, as well as consumers of the platform. For example, we've seen that there is a need for raw TCP socket requests. This is why we're currently looking at tighter integration with the F5, using their big IP operator to create a virtual tunnel to the internal OpenShift network from the F5. This will allow the F5 to expose a pod directly from the virtual IP. Now, moving forward, we also started thinking about the internet communication that the platform performs. And as we built our clusters in OpenShift 4.1, there weren't that many options. Proxy was not yet available for the platform. And what we used for communication with the internet was the breakout feature. The solution of the breakout feature required a lot of manual labor and also help from the network team. It relied on a whitelist of IP addresses that then required configuration, maintenance, and being constantly updated. Once OpenShift 4.2 came out, we had the possibility of evaluating proxy versus an air-gapped solution. In the end, we chose proxy since it had better support for operator upgrade paths. The implementation of the proxy then removed our dependency on an external team and the maintenance of a whitelist with IP addresses on it. Also, it allowed us to use the operators without any additional configuration or complications, really. This concludes our presentation, and we hope you've enjoyed it and that we've been able to share some of our thoughts on the topics and insights for possible topics of conversation for you when you build your OpenShift 4 cluster. Thank you.